This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is your show for September 20th, 2016, and I'm your host, Darren McKee. And with me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Vapoids?
Cristina Roach.
Hello.
And producer Pat.
Hi, everybody.
We have three great segments for you today, as usual. Cristina is going to look into the effectiveness of Vicks VapoRub. And then Adam is going to look into the physics of the bottle flip.
That's right.
But first, is there Trisodium Phosphate in children's cereal? And does that matter? Pat, can you enlighten us?
So, checker Cristina wrote to us on Facebook back in August with the following. I'm surprised to see that TRC hasn't covered this Trisodium Phosphate in food thing that is making the rounds on the interwebs again. So we thanked her for her suggestion and promptly forgot to cover it. Then she shared a video on the same subject with us last week. The video appears to have been posted in February of this year and has over 2.5 million views. It's of a man who is very concerned because he noticed that several of his kids' breakfast cereals contain Trisodium phosphate. He mentioned that he spent 22 years as a contractor and he used to do surface preparation for painting, and the product that they used for this was Trisodium phosphate, or TSP. He goes on to say that putting such a thing in children's cereal is beyond wrong, and to say that he's upset in the video would be a complete understatement. People talking about TSP in food is not new, though. A Snopes article about this notes that concerns over the scary-sounding ingredient have been circulating on the internet since at least 2010, but they really picked up steam in October 2014 when a picture juxtaposing Lucky Charms with a TSP heavy-duty cleaner started making the rounds. Several headlines on natural news sites go so far as to refer to TSP as a paint thinner, as in this headline from The Organic Prepper, paint thinner in children's cereal exposed. So back to the video that Cristina shared. I'm actually kind of sympathetic to this guy. I wish he had done some research before posting, but if we take the video at face value, he's coming from a place of grave concern for his children's health, and he is actually right about a couple things. Number one, TSP is used to prep surfaces for painting, and number two, it's also in his kids' cereal. But TSP is in a lot of things. Processed meats and cheeses, commercial baked goods, canned foods, nutritional supplements, toothpaste, shampoos, mouthwashes, cosmetics, and children's cereal, among other things. So what is it? Drawing from a pretty good article about this by Kevin Klatt, a PhD student in molecular nutrition, Trisodium phosphate is simply a sodium salt of phosphoric acid. It contains 3 sodiums and a phosphoric acid. Trisodium phosphate. It is widely used as an emulsifier and stabilizer in food. It can also be added as an antimicrobial agent, generally in meats. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has given TSP the GRAS, or generally recognized as safe designation. The European Union has approved sodium phosphates, including trisodium phosphate, for use as a food additive, and it's approved by Health Canada for several uses as a food additive. The concerns raised by the gentleman in the video, as well as many of the websites I saw, stem from not recognizing the difference between TSP as a food additive and its industrial uses. First off, it isn't a paint thinner. Generally, when we think of paint thinners, we mean something containing solvents like acetone, turpentine, or mineral spirits. But TSP is quite effective as a cleaner. It's used in degreasing and deglossing walls prior to painting, as the guy in our video suggests. TSP breaks the gloss of oil-based paints and opens the pores of latex-based paints, providing a surface that's better suited for adhesion of a new layer of paint. But as a cleaner, TSP is used in really high concentrations. According to the manufacturer I looked at, anywhere up to a cup of TSP dissolved in water for things like cleaning siding and decks. That's a far cry from the milligrams of TSP found in food items. As Klatt wrote on his blog, quote, "These kind of comparisons, X is in my food, but is also in Y, a non-food substance, do nothing to address safety concerns over food or food additives." He said he could make 1,000 memes showing that formaldehyde is used in everything from wood finishing to paint, but wonders if that would stop people from eating pears because they contain a small amount of formaldehyde. So TSP, is it toxic? Well, yeah, virtually everything is toxic at some dose. Water, just like any other substance, can be considered a poison when overconsumed in a specific period of time. It's called water intoxication or hyperhydration. It's worth mentioning that TSP can be bad for the environment as well. If it ends up in lakes or streams, the phosphates trigger an overgrowth of algae that results in depletion of oxygen levels in water, which endangers fish and aquatic plant life. This is something known as eutrophication, and TSP is being used less and less as a cleaning agent for that very reason. But what I really thought was interesting was that several of these video creators and websites focus on the idea that TSP is a cleaning product, and they decry, what are we doing putting cleaning products in our food? The interesting part of that for me is that these are often the same sites that suggest that cleaning products are dangerous, and you should make your own cleaning products that are, quote, natural. And what are those made of?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I say, why are we putting our food in cleaning products?
Right.
That seems a bigger question.
Right. So here's another potentially scary sounding ingredient, sodium bicarbonate. It's used in heavy-duty cleaning as an agent to detarnish silver. It's used to extinguish fires. But try making a batch of cookies without some baking soda.
Oh, it's delicious in cookies.
Vinegar is also used for cleaning, as is salt, flour, lemons, club soda, rice, grapefruits, cornstarch, and good old water. The idea that we use things to clean that we also ingest really shouldn't be much of a surprise or any cause for concern. I have to wonder if trisodium phosphate would have raised any concerns if it had an alternate name for its use in food like baking soda does.
Yeah.
As we've said so many times here on TRC, the devil is in the dose. And small doses of TSP in kids' breakfast cereals and other food is nothing to worry about. Thanks for writing in, Cristina.
This reminds me of that, well, I saw it on Penn and Teller's Bullshit, but it actually was in the 90s, a 14-year-old kid did it as a science project. You know, when they did the whole petition against dihydrogen monoxide?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And people signed this petition, and they were saying, you know, this causes corrosion and severe burns and a bunch of other things.
It's in your food.
Yeah, and it's in our food, and it's water. It's
It's in
H2O.
your body. When a mother drinks it, it hits her child.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically,
pretty
they
much.
gave water an unfamiliar name and then got people to sign a petition saying that it was dangerous based on its corrosiveness and all these
Yeah.
things.
Excellent job, Pat. I think you did a great job clearing up what the issue is, and I think every time anyone hears something about a chemical that's supposedly bad, they can just take a step back and think, well, chances are all chemicals can be bad in certain amounts, and maybe this is used in different ways that's safe for me. And just not to think, just because it's a chemical or sounds like a chemical, it's automatically bad for you.
You mentioned that you were a bit sympathetic. I have to admit, I'm not so sympathetic. I understand as a parent, you freak out about certain things, but it took me all of 5 minutes to Google this when Cristina posted it on our Facebook and to look at the facts and any evidence and stuff that's out there. So I'm still not completely sympathetic when people post this kind of stuff.
When I say I'm sympathetic, it's because I think he's coming from the right place. But as I said, I really wish he had done some research ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also possible that the reason it was so easy to Google this was because of the reaction spawned by this particular video. So this information may not have been as easily accessible to him prior to putting it together.
And it could be that the first, 4 or 5 entries on Google could have been pro-con
natural news, this looks good.
Exactly.
Boom.
Exactly. So it is easy to Google if you go to the right websites.
What I will say with regard to that, Darren, is there actually isn't a ton of information out there. There's a decently written Snopes article, and there's a decently written blog post, as I mentioned, from this PhD student. Beyond that, there's not a lot of people taking this down.
Well, now we got one more.
Yeah, we got one more.
Boom.
Good job.
First Trisodium Phosphate, now Vicks VapoRub. Be still my beating chest.
A while back, a checker named Omar posted this message on TRC's Facebook. I'm Mexican, and growing up, my mom told me to take Vicks VapoRub for pretty much everything. It's a cliche in Mexican families to prescribe it as a cure-all for things like sore throats, stuffy noses, or just because. I want to know if you can do an episode on its effectiveness and how it got so popular with certain cultures. Omar included a photo of a meme that had a pic of Vicks VapoRub with a caption that read, "Mexicans be like, this cures everything." Here's a fun excerpt from a video I came across on the website Latino Rebels.
Vicks VapoRub is our biggest remedy. That cures everything. You ever notice? Now you got a cold, pon un poquito Vicks VapoRub aquí, un poquito de Vicks. Mommy, I got a pimple, pon el Vicks VapoRub ahí, it pops the pimple. I got hemorrhoids, put a little Vicks over there, no problem, it fixed here. Vicks cures everything.
Vicks VapoRub is the panacea. You can cure everything, including the absence of diseases. We can cure anything with Vicks VapoRub. Anything. I mean, it's our Latino secret weapon.
That is so funny, and it reminds me of the bit Chris Rock did about Robitussin.
Right.
Absolutely.
For them, it was like Robitussin. Take the Robitussin. No matter what the problem was, Robitussin. Let that tussin seep in. It's like, I broke my foot. Just pour some Robitussin on it. It'll heal the bone.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. Interestingly, that last guy you heard on the video clip, which I'll post in our show notes, is Dr. Yasamuru Flores Pina, a professor at Otis College who has a PhD in folklore and mythology. Well, Omar, I don't know if we can ever really trace why VapoRub or vapour became the go-to cure-all with Mexican families, especially with abuelas. My background is Portuguese, and my mom slathered me with VapoRub at the hint of any cough or sniffle too. And I know there's a lot of cultures with their own version of the cure-all. If you've ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the father of the bride insists that Windex can cure anything from psoriasis to poison ivy. Seeing as the fall season's upon us, and I've been hearing a few friends complain that a cold is coming on, I thought I could at least delve into the claims and the research around its potential effectiveness for you, including one persistent claim about VVR on the soles of your feet. More on that later. So what is Vicks VapoRub? VapoRub is the brand name for VapoRub, a mentholated topical petrolatum-based gel. According to the company's site, Vicks VapoRub ointment is a topical cough medicine with medicated vapors that temporarily relieves nasal congestion, coughs, and muscle aches and pains due to colds. Its medicinal ingredients are listed in percentage by weight. So as an example, 2% W/W means the mass of the substance is 2% of the total mass of the solution. So VapoRub contains 4.73% camphor, 2.6% menthol, and 1.2% eucalyptus oil. The package directions state, for maximum relief of nasal congestion and coughs, rub ointment on 3 places, chest, throat, and back. The first couple of lines on the warning label says, caution, for external use only. Do not place in nostrils, not to be taken orally. By the way, despite the warning, I read a lot of people relaying, as kids, their parents made them ingest a spoonful of VapoRub or lined their nostrils with it when a cold came on. When I started digging, it was kind of tough to find much real evidence either supporting or refuting this. A lot of posts were from questionable sources as opposed to legit science. But let's start with a pervasive notion that putting VVR under a child's nose helps them breathe more easily despite the warning label. What do you guys think? Have you guys ever used VapoRub?
So this was definitely a thing when I was a kid, and my parents would put it directly under my nose, and it certainly didn't help me breathe. Like, I found it almost distressing as a kid.
What about you guys?
I remember my mother using it on my sister once, and she put it on her chest, and like her clothes stuck to it, and it was kind of gross. But I don't believe I ever used it myself.
I have a vague memory of perhaps my mother using it once or twice on my chest. I don't think there was anything like near the face. My mom was a nurse, and I don't think she would have done
Right. Dr. Jay Hoker is an emeritus member of the Department of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine at the Mayo Clinic. He addresses this on mayoclinic.org after a parent wrote in asking if VapoRub works to relieve nasal congestion in kids. He says VVR is ineffective for nasal congestion, but the strong menthol odor tricks your brain so that you feel like you're breathing through an unclogged nose. He goes on to add it's unsafe for use in children under 2 years of age, and it is only okay to use in children under the age of 6 on the neck and chest. By contrast, over-the-counter decongestant tablets and nasal sprays appear to narrow blood vessels in the lining of your nose, which leads to reduced swelling in your nasal passages. So, that can help with being able to breathe better. Hoker specifically warns against rubbing it in or around your nostrils, especially a child's nostrils, as absorbing topical camphor through mucous membranes can be toxic. And as far as ingesting this stuff orally, which the package warns against, some of you may have to step in and snatch that spoon away from your grandma because camphor is one of the main ingredients in VapoRub and other medications like Bengay, and it is highly toxic. Ingesting as little as 5 milliliters of camphor oil can cause fatal poisoning in toddlers. In 1983, the U.S. FDA ruled that camphor-containing products could not contain more than an 11% concentration of the substance. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about 4.73% in VapoRub. In 2009, a study was published in the journal Chest, an official publication of the American College of Chest Physicians. Those researchers found that putting Vicks VapoRub under a child's nose as opposed to rubbing it on the chest may actually make it harder to breathe in children under age 2, and this could result in an increase in mucus and congestion. Lead author Dr. Bruce Rubin is a Jesse Ball DuPont Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Pediatrics, and he also heads a lab called the Rubin Lab at the Children's Hospital of Richmond, Virginia. He became interested in testing the effects of VVR on young children after treating an 18-month-old girl who was brought into the emergency room with severe respiratory distress after VapoRub was placed under her nose. Rubin said he had heard of similar accounts from others. He and his colleagues tested the effects of VVR in the respiratory system of ferrets who have a similar airway anatomy and cellular makeup to humans.
Interesting.
Their test tube results showed VVR exposure increased mucus secretion in the animal's airways. Says Rubin, we showed in the lab that Vicks VapoRub produced changes consistent with inflammation and increased mucus in animals with pre-existing airway inflammation similar to that seen with a respiratory infection. So kids, and especially infants, have narrower airways than adults. So he suggests an increase in mucus or inflammation will narrow them more severely, which can lead to respiratory distress. Other studies have shown that menthol, another ingredient in VVR, may also make it harder to breathe. So that kind of validates your experience in a way, right, Pat? Now, some of these results were challenged in a note to the editor of Chest by Dr. Ian Paul of Penn State College of Medicine. Here's an excerpt. Because upper respiratory tract infections, or URTIs, are self-limited, the medications used to treat them must be safe and effective. As a pediatrician conducting trials on cough and cold medicines for children, I have criticized the limited evidence for these products. However, I found the current publication and press release incomplete and misleading with exaggerated or inaccurate statements, which he goes on to list in detail and which I link to in the show notes. His main concern was, quote, given the child's age, and he's talking about this 18-month kid, the presence of cold symptoms, the lack of effect of albuterol and prednisolone, and the improvement of the child's condition with oxygen therapy, it is unclear why bronchiolitis was not entertained as a diagnosis. Since bronchiolitis commonly causes asthma-like respiratory distress, and because adverse events, the use of VVR, are exceedingly rare, the omission of this information limits one's ability to determine causality. While the distress was reportedly of rapid onset, this was based on a subjective medical history from grandparents who did not follow label instructions. Okay, so full disclosure, Dr. Paul and several colleagues were conducting their own trial on the effectiveness of VVR in children with URTIs, funded through an unrestricted grant from Procter & Gamble. Guess what P&G manufactures?
Right, of course.
Everything.
Including Vicks VapoRub. Yep. It's important to note, though, that for those who don't know, an unrestricted grant means a research team can design and conduct a study independently from the study sponsor so that they can ensure their research is published regardless of whether the results are favorable to the sponsor. So Paul's research team recruited 138 children ages 2 to 11 for a randomized study that was partially double-blinded. The study was published in the journal Pediatrics in 2010, so about a year after this other study, and the results indicated applying a VapoRub on the chest was effective at providing kids symptomatic relief from nighttime cough and congestion versus no treatment or a placebo chest rub. But what about applying Vicks VapoRub to the soles of your kids' feet? Is there any evidence to support a trend that people on social media have shared around since it first came up in 2007? Here's an excerpt from an email that made the rounds. To stop nighttime coughing in a child or adult, as we found out personally, put Vicks VapoRub generously on the bottom of the feet at bedtime, then cover with socks. Works 100% of the time and is more effective in children than even very strong prescription cough medicines. I heard the head of the Canada Research Council describe these findings on the part of their scientists when they were investigating the effectiveness and usage of prescription cough medicines in children as compared to alternative therapies like acupressure. Okay, so first of all, anything that states something works 100% of the time should be taken with a huge grain of salt. And secondly, there's no entity called the Canada Research Council. But this information got shared around so much that the National Research Council of Canada, which is a real thing, had to put out a statement saying that no such study involving Vicks VapoRub had ever been conducted at the NRC.
It seems unlikely that the National Research Council would actually be involved in something like this. This seems to me more under the domain of something like Health Canada to actually carry out these sorts of things.
NRC, the National Research Council of Canada, seems to do more R&D work. It doesn't seem likely they would do this kind of specific investigation.
In that same statement, Adam, that they put out saying that there's been no such study involving Vicks VapoRub, they actually say in it, it is rare for NRC to engage in research into alternate applications of medications. So even if VVR may provide some relief when applied on a child's chest, there has been no research involving putting it on the soles of your feet. One article I linked to suggests this rumor may persist due to alt meds fascination and reflexology, including pointless practices like detoxing foot baths. But it really just doesn't make any sense to me how putting this stuff on your feet would do anything. It's certainly not going to make its way to your nasal passages through your feet during the night. Yeah. Anyways, in conclusion, colds totally suck, and it's certainly not fun seeing your child suffer through one, right? But the best and safest known treatments to offer kids relief from congestion are still saline solutions, gentle suction with a bulb syringe, lots of fluids which help thin out the mucus, and an oldie but a goodie, chicken soup, as warm liquids have shown to help the movement of mucus through your nose. There is no magical cure-all for a cold other than time. But parents should use their discretion. If your child is struggling to breathe, you should treat that as a medical emergency. And for the love of all that is good, warnings are on labels for a reason.
Well, it's interesting. We went from a segment about being concerned about labels that list ingredients that are considered to be safe to ignoring labels and doing other things.
Adam, physics of bottle flip? What are you talking about?
So maybe you've seen someone do this online, or maybe you're lucky enough to have seen it in person. Someone grabs a water bottle, or some other bottle that's filled with liquid, they flip it, and seemingly, fantastically, magically, it lands right side up. It stands vertically. The bottle like you would have set it down on a table. Amazing chance, skill, mix of both, something metaphysical going on. Let's look into it. So the first 2 times I saw videos with this, I thought maybe it was a fluke. Perhaps some guy or some girl sat there and flipped the bottle thousands of times just until they got it right. I mean, it's the internet. It's simple to pull off a statistically improbable trick in a video. Just do it 100 or 1,000 times. Discard every video that fails. Use the one that works. But then I saw a video of a friend of mine doing the bottle flip while facing away from a table and then totally nailing it. This isn't just some guy on the internet. This is someone I know that I don't think spends hundreds of thousands of iterations to get a video right. I looked more at the hashtag bottle flip because, I was on Instagram and I clicked around and I saw tons of videos where people were doing this very common flip. And it didn't seem to be all that mystifying anymore. And the likelihood of this being a rare feat seemed much less likely. So I did a little digging into this fad. Have you guys seen any of these videos, bottle flips?
So I had a friend post, I think last week, Adam, and he was with, I think, his kids. Well, there were 3 kids. I'm not sure which were his and which were friends of the kids, but all 3 of them did it at exactly the same time. So I think it's probably pretty doable.
Cool.
I haven't seen any videos on this at all.
All right.
I'm with Cristina. I haven't seen any. I wasn't aware this was a thing. I'm actually surprised it is a thing, but we'll hear what you have to say.
All right. So the start of this fad seems to trace back to videos of Mike Senatore performing at a talent show at Ardrey Kell High School. These went viral back in May, and in the videos, Mike is seen tossing a water bottle, flipping it, and then having it land right side up on a TV dinner tray. He said he'd done this first a year earlier in chemistry class. He flipped a bottle and was surprised to see it land straight. So he practiced this at his job when he was bored, again and again, until he had the knack of it and was able to do it repeatedly. And he claims at one point that he did it 30 times in a row. Pretty impressive. So what's the trick? So Mike uses a specific type of water bottle, in this case a Deer Park water bottle, and he fills it to about a third. And there's a specific line, a specific sort of divot in the bottle that he uses to get the exact amount of water that he needs. So based just on what I'd seen in the videos and hearing that it was 1/3, I tried it myself. I filled the water bottle to about a third, and after only 3 tosses, I was able to get it to land properly. So, not really impossible. I can't consistently do it like Mike, of course, but with a little practice, it's easy to sort of correct if you see, oh, that flip went a little too far, not quite far enough, and then you can get it. That's pretty much how it works, but why does it work?
Wait a sec. Is it one rotation, many rotations? What's
One
the goal?
rotation.
Okay.
So you hold it near the top.
Yep.
It flips once and then it lands.
Okay.
So that's usually what it looks like in all these videos. So if a bottle was completely full or empty, it would keep spinning. But something about it being 1/3 full with water seems to make it predisposed to land upright. The exact level is hard to get, and some bottles seem to work better than others. I had a decent amount of success with a water bottle I tried, but when I tried it again with a Crystal Pepsi bottle, I had a lot more trouble. Nathaniel Stern, an assistant professor of physics and astronomy at Northwestern University, explains how this works. Basically, it's a mix of angular momentum and fluid dynamics. You have a bottle that is filled with about 1/3 water, and you can't just toss it straight. You have to flick it while holding the top, which gives it some spin, or angular momentum. So angular momentum is like regular momentum. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. So an object that is spinning will stay spinning unless acted upon somehow. So if the bottle is full or empty, it will just keep spinning at roughly the same rate, slowing a bit with air resistant, but nothing significant. Very hard to make it land properly. And even if it could land on the bottom, because of that angular momentum, it would probably keep spinning. But the bottle, in this case, has a small amount of water in it, which sloshes around. The bottle is spinning and trying to transfer its angular momentum to the water inside. The bottle itself, which is made of very thin plastic, weighs significantly less than the water inside, and so a lot of the bottle's momentum is transferred to the water that's in it. In a successful flip, the angular rotation is slowed down just enough for the water to be at the bottom of the bottle when it lands, which keeps it bottom heavy enough to land vertically and then not topple over. If you watch closely, the bottle will start to spin and then actually slow down before landing, and it almost seems as if the bottle falls down straight at the end because of the way it flips. The bottle flip is an impressive looking trick, but there are reasons for which it works. Try it out yourself, and you might find it isn't as difficult as it may seem. The trick is a 1/3 filled bottle and a perfect flip, and the reason this works is because the light bottle imparts its angular momentum to the more massive water it contains at just the right rate.
Thanks, Adam. And thanks for joining us once again, listeners. Pat showed us that trisodium phosphate is in various things, including your food, but the issue is the dose. If it's a small amount, it probably is not going to harm you, especially with this particular chemical, but for other ones, read up on whether it is actually harmful for the doses you might actually encounter in your life. Cristina explored Vicks VapoRub and whether it actually works, and it seems like there's some efficacy for applying to the chest, but not so much at all for applying to the bottoms of your feet. As for why it's culturally interesting in certain communities, could you write in if you happen to know more than we do? And finally, Adam looked into the physics of the bottle flip, which science indicates it's just possible and regular old momentum and gravity and other physical forces. Try it out yourself at home. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, phosphoids.
Stay classy, not smart-assy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Outtakes.
Look at us being all professional, knocking it out of the park.
Boom.
It's always better when there's no Darren segment, am I right?